Good morning. Welcome to Radio Friends on Friday, March the 25th. Our friend Scott Christianson is with us today. And normally when Scott is here, we talk a lot about artificial intelligence and how that affects our lives and how it could change our lives. Today, something a little bit different. You wanted to deal with Ukraine and how what is happening in Ukraine affects us here in the United States, even though it's thousands of miles away, and the ties that the University of Missouri has with Ukraine.
So the University of Missouri has had not only students from Ukraine, the journalism school has many people that have been part of the Fred Fenley Fellowship program here and have actually trained those journalists and are now reporting from Ukraine and other countries about the conflict going on there. So a lot of Ukrainians that came here for their journalism training. We also have MBA students that have gone back to Ukraine and are working there or have worked there. And so we're watching it very closely. And I even had a chance to establish some connections with colleagues over there when I went over there in 2019. We've done numerous collaborations together, papers, academic papers, and things of that nature. So we're very concerned about what's going on.
Having been there yourself, how does this affect you personally?
Well, you worry a lot because you know those people there and you're concerned about what's going to happen. One of the things that I would say that I noticed when I was talking with people there was how much they value their ability to be a democracy. I was in Kiev and saw the memorials to the people that were gunned down in 2014, that then led to a revolution where the people basically overthrew the current president, drove him out of the country, and he had to go to Moscow to survive. And I asked somebody, well, what if the current president that you're electing is also turns out to be that way? And they said, well, we'll have another revolution then, because we're not going to go back to a situation where we're not electing our own president.
So the outcome here of what is happening today, how are people accepting that or not accepting it?
Well, it's difficult to understand what's going on, and it's difficult to comprehend what's going on. My feeling is that we need all those bright, energetic people that I met there. We need them in our world helping to solve problems, like what is going to be the future with artificial intelligence? What is going to be the future with technology? And we need those bright minds with us solving these big problems. We don't need them behind some new iron curtain.
And you said, you had a statement here that those people said they will not allow their country not become undemocratic again.
Yes.
They will not allow it. When I think of how we in this country do not take our right to vote seriously and many times just refuse to take the time to go down to the polls, it's sad.
Yeah.
It's sad, and it makes me somewhat sick to my stomach to think of that, because we could very easily lose what we have if we continue going this way.
I think that has been a problem, and I don't know how to solve that, but I hope that what we see in the U.S. here is a coming together for the Ukrainian people, and that recognizes that maybe we shouldn't take for granted what we have so much. And I wanted to share, I know we have just a little bit of time left, but I wanted to share a couple of things that might be of interest to people who want to read and kind of get their head around some of what's going on. One is a book called Strong Men, and this is a relatively recent book, and it talks about how people like Putin come to power and seem to stay in power. And so I would highly recommend this book.
It's called Strong Men, Mussolini to the Present.
Yes.
Okay.
Ruth Ben-Ghiat, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Excellent book, very easy to read. Another one is called The Gates of Europe. If you're interested in the history of Ukraine, I read this before I went over there. Has great maps I would recommend taking a few notes as you're going along if you're like me and forget names from time to time, especially if they're not Americanized names. But also an excellent book on the history of Ukraine.
Called The Gates of Europe.
Yes.
The Gates of Europe.
Yep, A History of Ukraine. And, that's one of the things about Ukraine. It is kind of the breadbasket of Europe. It's very productive, has a lot of natural resources. That's, I think, one of the reasons Putin might be interested in this area. And then another one is an older book. I think this was actually written in the 60s, but it's by Barbara Tushman called The Guns of August. And it's about World War I and how Europe basically stumbled in to World War I and how things can get out of hand and how misconceptions and perceptions that aren't true can lead to escalation of conflicts. And some people think that this is a big influence on John Kennedy during the Cuban Missile Crisis and caused him to not react suddenly and to slow things down a bit. So I just think that's an interesting historical context to think about these modern conflicts and how things can get out of hand.
With disinformation. And disinformation is something that we need to protect ourselves against because it's all around us.
Right. And I will give you one other website that I think will have a little URL that people can go to and find these recommendations and others. And that is called Bellingcat, so like Belling cat. And that is a website that actually does investigative journalism, but it's by citizens. And they were one of the first to figure out that the Russian army was responsible for downing the Malaysian airline over Ukraine in 2014. And so they actually have done a lot of research about the disinformation that is coming out of Russia, their excuses for coming into Ukraine. So they have been creating excuses with their people about, there's been these travesties and we're going in and we're correcting this. And they
are calling themselves peacekeepers.
Right, exactly. And so they've been, it's not up-to-date information like you're going to get on CNN. It takes a little while, but it's a very interesting website to see how citizens can actually contribute to fighting disinformation, especially state-sponsored disinformation.
All right. Scott, thank you so much for coming by and sharing your thoughts on this and your experience. And your newsletter, if people want to sign up for it, the newsletter is what?
It's just go to prophecynews.com and you will find it there.
Okay, prophecynews.com.
Yes.
That'll get it. And it's free.
Yes, it
All
sure
right.
is.
Scott, thank you so much for coming by today.